The day Coach Raymond Dex told Imani she'd never make it past regionals, she was 17 years old, standing in the shallow end of the Pinecrest Aquatic Center, with chlorine burning her eyes and his voice cutting through the echo of the pool like something meant to stick. It stuck, but not the way he intended. Her name was Zara Okonkwo. Not the name you'd expect to see carved into the record board at the University of Sissy's aquatic complex, maybe, but that's exactly where it ended up. Zara, daughter of Emmanuel Okonkwo, a security guard who worked double shifts at a hospital in Memphis, and Dr. Grace Okonkwo, a nurse practitioner who hadn't slept a full night since 2004. They came to America from Lagos when Zara was 2 years old, with 3 suitcases and a conviction so deep it bordered on reckless, that this country would give their daughter something they couldn't. Zara discovered swimming at age 9 when her elementary school partnered with a local YMCA for a summer program. Most of the kids hated it. Too cold. Too much water up the nose. Zara got in and never wanted to get out. By 14, she was the fastest girl in Memphis in the 200-meter freestyle. By 16, she was training at Pinecrest, the serious facility, the one with Olympic-caliber coaches, and a waiting list, and a culture that made very clear, very quickly, who belonged there and who was just visiting. Zara was never made to feel like she belonged. Coach Dale Whitmore ran the Pinecrest Elite program like a private club. He had 22 years of experience, 3 swimmers who'd made Olympic trials, and a way of looking at certain kids that said everything his mouth was too careful to say out loud. He was not a shouting man. He never raised his voice. What he did instead was quieter and colder, a pattern of dismissal, consistent. It had its own rhythm. Zara felt it the first week. She had finished second in a time trial, behind a girl named Caitlin, whose father was on the Pinecrest board of directors. Whitmore spent 7 minutes with Caitlin afterward, breaking down her turn technique, adjusting her entry angle, telling her she had the profile of a collegiate standout. He spent 45 seconds with Zara. He glanced at her time, said not bad, and turned around. She told her father that night. Emmanuel listened, then asked her if she wanted to quit. She said no. He nodded. That was the end of that conversation. The moment that changed everything happened on a Thursday morning in March, during a practice session that Zara almost didn't attend because she'd been up past midnight, helping her mother prep for a certification exam. She was tired. Her arms felt like wet cement. She considered sending Coach Whitmore a message saying she was sick. She didn't. She showed up, got in the water, swam a 200-meter freestyle that, by any objective measure, should have gotten attention. 1 minute, 53 seconds, a personal best, a time that, if posted in competition, would have placed her in the top 20 in her age group nationally. Whitmore was standing at the edge of the pool with his clipboard when she finished. He watched her. He checked his stopwatch. Then he said, without looking up, and this is the part Zara would remember for the rest of her life, that time's going to be a problem. She grabbed the lane rope. Water dripping, chest heaving. What do you mean? He finally looked at her. I mean, we need to talk about realistic expectations for girls like you in this program. Girls like you. He didn't explain what that meant. He didn't have to. 2 of the other swimmers heard it. One of them looked at her pool deck. The other, Caitlin, to her credit, met Zara's eyes with an expression that said she understood exactly what had just happened and was ashamed of being in the same room. Whitmore kept talking. He said the team had limited spots for travel competitions. He said her stroke needed significant work before she'd be competitive at the level they were targeting. He said she might want to consider whether her goals were aligned with what's achievable for someone at her stage. Zara did not cry. Not there. Not in front of him. She got out of the pool, toweled off, picked up her bag, and walked to the parking lot, where she sat in her car for 11 minutes before starting the engine. Then she drove home and made a decision. She didn't quit. That was the first decision, and the most important one. The one that everything else grew out of. The second decision. was that she would find a way to train without needing Dale Whitmore to believe in her. This is easier said than done when you're a 17-year-old who doesn't have money, connections, or a parent who can call the right people. What Zara had was a second-hand laptop, a library card, and a stubbornness her mother called a gift from God and a trial from God at the same time. She found video archives of elite swimmers online. She studied butterfly stroke mechanics at 2 in the morning. She printed training plans from coaching forums and modified them herself. She started waking up at 5:30 to get an extra hour in the water before school at the YMCA, where she'd first learned to swim, because she still technically had a membership from her childhood, and the lane fees were $8. Emmanuel started driving her every morning. He didn't complain. He brought a thermos of coffee and waited in the parking lot and drove her to school after. He never once said, "Maybe this is too much." He'd drive her in silence, and when she got out of the car, he'd say the same thing, "Make them see it." Grace Okonkwo framed that sentence in her head like a painting. Make them see it, not prove them wrong, not show them up. Make them see what was already there. Zara held on to that. She stayed in the Pinecrest program, because leaving meant losing access to the pool, the timing equipment, the competition pathways that mattered. She showed up to every practice. She worked hard. She did not give Whitmore the satisfaction of a reaction. But she also did something Whitmore didn't know about. A swim coach named Yvette Larson ran a small club out of Shelby County that operated entirely on donations and a grant from a local hospital foundation. She coached underfunded athletes, mostly kids from families who couldn't afford the private programs. She'd swum in the 1992 Olympic trials herself, finishing 6th, close enough to know what that world looked like, far enough away to still feel the sting. Zara emailed her, explained her situation, attached her times. Yvette responded in 2 hours. The message said, "Come Saturday at 7 a.m., bring your own equipment, we'll see what you've got." What Yvette saw that Saturday made her set down her coffee. She watched Zara swim a 200-meter butterfly that was technically imperfect in 4 specific ways and still extraordinary. The power was real. The instinct was real. Yvette had coached for 18 years, and she knew the difference between a kid who trained hard and a kid who was built for the water. Some people belong in it. Zara was one of those people. "Who's coaching you?" Yvette asked afterward. "Dale Whitmore, at Pinecrest." Yvette's expression did not change. "And what does he say about your butterfly?" "He says focus on freestyle." "Of course he does." Yvette started working with Zara on weekends, free of charge. She called it an investment. She fixed the 4 technical problems she'd identified. She introduced Zara to a specific interval training protocol that pushed her anaerobic threshold in ways the Pinecrest sessions never had. Within 3 months, Zara's 200 butterfly dropped by 4 seconds. 4 seconds. In competitive swimming, that's not an improvement. That's a transformation. Yvette entered her in a regional invitational without telling Whitmore. It wasn't deceptive. Exactly. Zara was free to compete as an independent entrant, which she did. She just showed up, swam her race, and posted a time that put her second in the region for her age group. Whitmore saw the results the following Monday. He didn't say anything to Zara directly, but he moved her to a better lane. He spent 6 minutes reviewing her stroke, and the word "girls like you" was never said again, at least not in her presence. Zara noticed all of it. She didn't say a word either. The summer before her senior year, she was recruited by 4 Division I programs. Tennessee offered a full scholarship. She accepted on a Tuesday afternoon, sitting at the kitchen table with her parents, and when she signed the letter of intent, Emmanuel Okonkwo made a sound that wasn't quite crying and wasn't quite laughing. Grace just put her hand on top of her daughter's and kept it there for a long time. Dale Whitmore sent a congratulatory email. It was 3 sentences. "Heard the good news.
Well deserved.
Best of luck at Tennessee." No personal touch. No acknowledgement of what it had taken. No accounting for the year he'd spent making her feel like an afterthought in her own lane. Zara read it twice. Then she closed her laptop and went to help her mother make jollof rice. Some things aren't worth the energy they'd cost. Tennessee was a different world. Her coach, Dr. Patricia Osi, no relation, though they laughed about it the first week, saw exactly what Yvette had seen, but with a bigger platform and more resources to work with. She adjusted Zara's start block technique. She introduced altitude training camps. She built a mental performance program around Zara's race day anxiety, which was real and significant and had never been acknowledged at Pinecrest. "You swim angry, Doctor," Osi told her once during a debrief session. "I've seen it. That's not always bad, but if we can channel it into something cleaner, something controlled, you'll have access to energy you're currently burning just getting yourself under control." Zara sat with that for a week. Then she came back and said, "I think you're right." What followed was a year of unlearning things. Unlearning the way she'd trained herself to anticipate being overlooked. Unlearning the defensive crouch she carried into the water, like she was always bracing for the moment someone would tell her she didn't belong. Swimming competitively requires a specific kind of surrender. You have to give yourself to the water completely, and Zara had been holding something back for years without realizing it. She stopped holding it back. Her junior year, she won the SEC championship in the 200 butterfly. Her time, 1 minute 54.2 seconds. She stood on the podium and thought about a Thursday morning in March, 5 years earlier, a clipboard, a man who didn't look up, and the words that were supposed to end her. They didn't end anything. They were just words. And she'd outswum every single one of them. The Olympic trials were held in Indianapolis, in a facility that seated 8,000 people and smelled like chlorine and nervous anticipation in equal measure. Zara arrived 2 days early with Dr. Osi and a team manager named Paul, who handed her a detailed schedule every morning and asked nothing from her except that she eat, sleep, and stay off social media. She ate. She slept. She stayed off social media. The night before her event, she called her parents. Emmanuel answered on the first ring. Grace was beside him. She always was for the important calls. "You ready?" her father asked. "I think so." "You ready? Or you think so?" She laughed. "I'm ready, Dad. Make them see it." Same words. Same voice. 8 years after he'd first said them in a parking lot outside a YMCA at 5:30 in the morning. "I will," she said. She hung up and went to sleep. The 200-meter butterfly final at the Olympic trials is not a subtle event. It is 90 seconds of everything. Every training session, every early morning, every doubt, every moment someone told you the water wasn't yours to claim. It is a reckoning, in real time, visible to anyone watching, measurable down to the hundredth of a second. Zara stood behind the block in lane 4. She shook out her hands. She looked at the water. She thought about one thing. Not Whitmore. Not the words. Not the year she spent driving to the YMCA before dawn. She thought about the first time she got in a pool at age 9. The feeling of the water receiving her, of being weightless for the first time in her life, of the strange certainty she'd felt even then, that this was where she was supposed to be. She held on to that. The starter called them up. 8 women, 8 lanes, 8 separate sets of reasons for being there. The signal sounded. Zara hit the water with everything she had. The first 50 meters were about control. Dr. Osi had drilled it relentlessly. Don't go out too hard, trust your second 50. Let the other swimmers burn themselves, chasing a split they can't hold. Zara had learned to watch her own stroke instead of her competitors, to feel the rhythm in her shoulders and hips instead of racing the clock with her eyes. She felt it in the first turn. Something loose, something right. The kind of swim where your body stops arguing with itself and everything lines up. Stroke, breath, kick, turn into something that isn't mechanical anymore. It's almost musical. She came off the third wall in second place, half a body length behind a swimmer from Stanford named Amanda Pike, who had been the national favorite for 2 years running. 50 meters left. This is where most people begin to manage, to survive, to protect what they've built over the first 150 meters and hope it's enough. Zara was not most people. She had been training this exact moment for 8 years. Not in a pool, in a parking lot, in a kitchen, in a car at 5:30 in the morning, in a coach's silence, in a girl's own refusal to believe a word of it. She found another gear. Not sprint. A deepening. Like reaching further into something she'd always known was there, but hadn't been asked for until now. She finished the last wall, she touched the pad, she looked up at the board. 1 minute, 52.7 seconds. A new personal best, a new meet record. First place. The sound in that facility was something she would struggle to describe for the rest of her life. 8,000 people making a noise that isn't quite cheering and isn't quite screaming. It's something more like recognition. Like a room full of people seeing something they know they'll remember. Dr. Osi was at the edge of the pool, hands over her mouth. Yvette Larson, who had flown in from Memphis on a ticket Emmanuel had quietly purchased for her 3 weeks earlier, was standing in the upper deck with tears running down her face and making no effort to stop them. Emmanuel and Grace Okonkwo were in Section C, row 12. Emmanuel had his hands clasped on top of his head like a man who doesn't know what to do with what he's feeling. Grace was entirely still, in the way she got when something was too large for movement. Zara climbed out of the pool. A volunteer handed her a towel. A camera found her face. She didn't perform anything. She didn't jump. She didn't point at the scoreboard. She stood there, dripping, in lane 4 of an Indianapolis Aquatic Center, and she breathed. And then, slowly, clearly, unmistakably, she smiled. She called her parents from the media tent 40 minutes later, still in her suit, still with the chlorine in her hair. Emmanuel answered again on the first ring. "Did you see it?" she asked. "Every second," he said. His voice was different, quieter than usual, like something had settled in him. "Dad, you drove me to that YMCA for 2 years. I know, 5:30 in the morning, every single day. I know, baby. I just want you to know I know that I know what that was." There was a pause. "You don't owe me anything, Zara." "I'm not saying I owe you. I'm saying I know." Another pause. Then he said, and she would carry this sentence for the rest of her life, "That's enough. That's more than enough." The Olympic Games were 4 months away. The training that followed was the hardest of her career, more demanding than anything she'd done at Tennessee, more precise than anything Yvette had given her. Dr. Osei designed a program that treated Zafra's body like the instrument it was, calibrated, maintained, and respected. There were hard days, days when the time on the board didn't match the effort in the water, days when the weight of expectation felt like a second body she was carrying through every lap. Days when she wondered whether the version of herself who'd qualified was somehow better than the version trying to prepare. On those days, she went back to something simple. She thought about lane 4. The feeling of the water receiving her. The thing that had been true at age 9 and was still true now. She was supposed to be. She won gold in Paris on a Tuesday afternoon in August, in front of 15,000 people and a television audience of many millions, with a time that no woman in the history of the event had ever posted in Olympic competition. 1 minute. 51.9 seconds. She stood on the podium as they played the anthem, with the medal around her neck and her parents, somewhere in the crowd she couldn't see but could feel. The way you can always feel the people who drove you to the pool, at 5:30 in the morning, when the world was still dark, and the only thing that made sense was the water waiting for you. Somewhere in Memphis, Dale Whitmore watched the broadcast. What he thought, exactly, is not known. What he felt, whether it was regret or pride he hadn't earned, or something more complicated than either, is not known either. What is known is this. He watched a young woman he had once described as misaligned with realistic expectations stand on the highest step of an Olympic podium, gold around her neck, her name on every screen in the world, and there was nothing left to say about it. No clipboard, no stopwatch, no quiet, careful dismissal, just Zara Okonkwo and the water, and the thing that had always been true about both of them.